Stephen A. Is involved in a little bit of controversy, not with me, but with Pat McAfee. The New York Post reports that a verbal tussle between ESPN host Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee was really, really heated a couple of weeks ago. Let me read from, I believe, Ryan Glasspiegel's story here, the New York Post. Tempers flared in an explosive argument in a recent phone call between two of ESPN's highest profile personalities. The Post has learned that a private conversation several weeks ago between Pat McAfee and Stephen A. Smith got heated as things escalated to the point where McAfee called Smith an MFer. The dispute arose from the creative differences involving a yet-to-be-announced project that Stephen A. Smith is executive producing through his own production company, Mr. SAS Productions, that will ultimately air on ESPN. Let's see. The Post heard that in the aftermath of the spat, Smith had banned McAfee from appearing on First Take, where he had weekly Tuesday appearances during the football season. Anyway, Stephen A. and McAfee, when reached by Glass-Steagall, now they're all playing nice, and via text and email, they respond to everything squashed. There's no beef here. There's no problem here. Look, this is a story that isn't going to go away. ESPN has turned over total control to its talent. And these guys, from Pat McAfee, a football player and punter, he's not a trained journalist. He didn't prepare for a media career. He just invented one. I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking him. I'm just, hats off to him. But he has no respect for protocol and what, generally speaking, goes on in the media industry, chain of command, any of that. Stephen A. Smith, the same thing. Different degree for a different reason. But when you've been promoted well beyond your talent and or qualifications, and so let me walk you through that, because Stephen A. has talent for talking on TV. But how did he get here? Pretending to be a sports writer while editors rewrote everything that he tried to write. That's how he got here. And so he was ushered up the line as a sports writer. He had no writing talent. Those are facts. That's not me trying to take a pot shot at him. That's the truth. Then they transitioned him, and he doesn't know very much about sports at all. That's just a fact. That's why he makes so many factual errors. That's why he says stupid things like, hey, kick a field goal on third down just in case you miss. You can kick it on fourth down. He just doesn't know much about sports. He's been ushered and promoted into this position because he's, in my view, this is my opinion, he's a pathological liar. And that's why we do the Daily Dose of Stephen A. Smith. That's why we point out like these obvious things that he says that just aren't true. That's how you get the position. People comfortable just telling lies and doing what they're told. He rose up because he did what he was told from his handlers. They rewrote his stuff. They pushed him up the sports writing ladder. They've done the same thing to the talk ladder and created the myth that Stephen A. Smith is some sort of insightful, profound pontificator about sports. He's not insightful. He's not profound. He's loud, obnoxious, and some people might say entertaining. Some people might say that. Others might say it's really fraudulent, it bores me. But he's created this myth. And part of the myth, and others have helped him, part of this myth, I've been number one in sports talk TV for 10 years. And he's allowed to say this over and over and over again, and people now believe it, like Stephen A. entered a race. It's like he started, it's like in auto racing, they talk about pole position or qualifying. They're acting like Stephen A. qualified, he started the race in 15th place and then advanced his way up to number one in morning sports talk TV. There was only one sports talk TV show, Cold Pizza. Then it became First Take. And then Stephen A. got hooked up with Skip Bayless. They weren't competing against anybody. Fox Sports didn't have a morning talk show. There was no one nationally they were competing against. So, of course, he's number one. And he's working for ESPN, a giant. And so basically like ESPN is steroids. But again, they just keep repeating and repeating it. And people start buying it like, yeah, he's been number one for 10 years. And it's like, well, he's been in a league of one for most of that time. And now he's in a league of two competing against an expansion team, FS1. No one expected, if he were number two at this, he would be a laughingstock. It would be one of the most incredible upsets in the history of anything. But they just keep repeating it, repeating it, and repeating it to hype up the value, to pump up, to inflate the value of Stephen A. Smith. And I want to play you this clip of Dan Le Batard. He's talking about Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee, and then I'm going to break down for you what Le Batard is actually doing. Play the clip.
But I have found fascinating, Stugotz, over the last 15 years of what Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless built, right? Because a decade as the number one show on television, that's like unheard of. What Stephen A. Smith is worth right now, after very quietly, Stugotz, saying a couple times, I'm underpaid on television. He welcomes in McAfee and all these $17 million contracts, Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, when he's the voice and face of ESPN, and he's now underpaid as soon as they all arrive. He welcomes them all in, and now his ratings are giant.
So I just want to explain to you what Le Batard's doing. And I say this without animus. It's a hat tip to Le Batard. He's trying to recruit Stephen A. Smith and or Pat McAfee to take a deal from DraftKings. And to basically, Le Batard's got this thing, Meadowlark Media. It's financed by DraftKings or FanDuel or one of these sports gambling sites. And Le Batard and John Skipper, who he's in partnership with, John Skipper, former president, chairman of ESPN, is in partnership with Le Batard with Meadowlark Media. Le Batard and Skipper hate ESPN and have it out for them. Le Batard's hatred mostly stems from his relationship with John Skipper, but John Skipper's upset about the way he got pushed out at ESPN over his coke habit and getting compromised by some prostitute or some drug dealer or whatever he got compromised by, and he had to leave his job.